Hey, man, did you watch the Joshua and Ruiz fight over the weekend?
I missed it, but I saw the highlights afterwards, and Ruiz looked very impressive with his performance.
Right. So people keep saying, oh, the fat guy with the fast hands. But, if you look at some of the details, yes, he does have fast hands, of course. Man, the guy can box. And I mean box, not just punch.
Yeah, for sure. It just goes to show you, muscles are just for looks, I guess.
All right. Last thing about this. There was a big debate. I don't know why, because to me it's not a debate, but there was a debate online. The guy was born in America, but he, boxed for the Mexican team, and they're calling him the first Mexican to win a heavyweight title. What do you make of this debate where he's like, well, he's born here, but he competed for them? I think he's a dual citizen. How do you weigh these citizenship, nationality, identity questions? As somebody who has you have a Cuban and Mexican parent, right? Parents.
Yes, I do. Yeah. So I consider myself Mexican, Cuban American. Obviously, I was born here. I'm not a citizen of Cuba or Mexico, although my dad being a political exile, the children of political exiles are, supposedly considered citizens under the original free constitution of Cuba. But if I were to go back there, they could probably hold me and mess with me. But, there is a fine line between that. I think he's just, trying to represent for his heritage, his roots, his blood. He's Mexican by heritage. And, there's a fine line there. He's definitely, I think, in my opinion, representing the United States, but as a Mexican American.
Fair enough. All right, let's get to your fight if we can. I was looking at your resume today, Ricardo. Do you realize as of March, you've been in a Zuffa promotion for 10 years?
Yeah, that was back in WEC in March 2009.
So in 10 years of competing in a Zuffa organization, so let's say the highest level, what have you accomplished that you're really proud of? What is still out there on the bucket list?
The belt is still out there on the bucket list. What I've accomplished so far is, being one of the top in my division, being one of the best fighters in the world in the featherweight division, holding my spot over these 10 years, and just continuing to go out there and put on good performances. I go out there and I finish fights. I have the second most finishes in the featherweight division, only trailing the champ by a couple, and I'm nipping at his heels.
Has the decade gone like you'd expect? If I'd have talked to you in your WEC debut and I would have told you your career is going to go like this for the next 10 years, what would you have told me back then?
I don't know. Definitely, starting out this whole career, it's kind of been a fight by fight thing. I never knew, starting out as an amateur, where I was going to take it, how far I was going to take it. I'm one of these guys that just kind of rolls with it fight by fight. So if you would have told me back then, I probably would have, smiled and laughed and, said thanks for the compliment. We'll see where it goes.
What are the turning points? What are the moments you look back on? You're like, this is why I got to the next level. What were those fights? Either wins or losses, I suppose, right?
Yeah, I think the one that made me kind of realize that I could take this pretty far was my first professional title fight. It was kind of a local title, but it was against the guy that I have known, through the wrestling community. He was a huge wrestler in high school. Would have been a 4-time state champ, but his senior year got in a little trouble. Could have wrestled the state tournament. Me and him were both coming up at the same time. He was undefeated. I was undefeated. It was a fight in his hometown. So I literally had maybe 50 people there, and then 500 people were there rooting against me. And I came out with a win, and I finished him in the 4th round. So there was a lot of hype around him that he was going to be the next big thing coming out of the Midwest. And I was happy to shut that one down. So after that fight, I kind of realized that I could take this career pretty far.
And inside Zuffa, and any one moment you were like, this is why I advanced to that next stage.
I think every fight, beginning with my first one in the UFC, when I first signed with Zuffa, I was in the WEC, and then they merged us in. And coming from a smaller show, you kind of question yourself, and you're like, oh man, I'm coming from a smaller show. Do I deserve to be here? And slowly but surely, after every fight I had with the UFC, after my first fight, I got a TKO in the 1st round against the guy who was in the UFC way before me. He was a vet, Matt Grice. And then my fight with Cub Swanson. And each fight after, leading up, those first 4 fights of mine were stepping up in level each time. And each time I was coming out on top. And then obviously after my fight against Eric Koch, he was a former #1 contender at the time, and finished him in the second round. That was another huge one for me that said, I'm ready for a title shot now.
Now, you are based out of Miami still, right?
I live in Illinois, but the last month of camp I do down in Miami for every fight.
Now, that being said, correct me if I'm wrong, we spoke a while ago, I think about a year ago or so. You're going to drive from Miami back to Chicago? How's that going to work?
I'm already back in Chicago, so I flew this time. Normally I do drive from my camps, but I said screw that. I've had enough driving, and after my last fight, developing a blood clot on that long flight to Argentina, I think it was coupled with the drive home 2 days before. So I was like, I'm going to stay away from that from now on, and decided to fly down and rent a car.
So what happened to the birds that you usually bring with you, the parakeets or whatever they are?
My dad's taking care of my parrot and one of my dogs. I took one other dog with me that's still kind of a puppy right now, so she got to fly on board with me.
All right, fair enough. Let's talk about that blood clot for a second. How did you know something was wrong?
It was the first night I landed in Argentina. I just got done cutting weight. I did a run, sat in the sauna, and I felt something in my calf that almost felt like a small muscle pull is how it started out. And just progressively through the week got worse. Like that next morning I woke up, I couldn't straighten my leg out. It was extremely painful to the touch. But I never had that before, so I didn't know what it was. I thought I pulled a muscle running on the treadmill or something. And it just got progressively worse throughout the week. And, luckily it didn't affect my performance on fight night. But then afterwards, the UFC called me and asked if I have any injuries I wanted checked out. And I said, yeah, something's up with my calf. I don't know what it is. So they set up an appointment for me. And when I was explaining to the doctor my situation, he immediately thought it was a blood clot. And I kind of wrote him off like, I don't think you know what you're talking about, doc. But he was right. He sent me for an ultrasound, and that's what it turned out to be.
And how did you end up getting rid of it?
They put me on blood thinners. And they wanted me on it for 3 months. And I told them to pump the brakes on that one. And I talked them down to 6 weeks. So after 6 weeks, I had numerous blood tests done. Everything came back clear. So it looks like I'm all right.
Is this a condition that could come back? Like, for example, I had heat stroke once. Once you get it once, you're much more susceptible to it additional times. Are you in a situation like that?
I don't think so. Some of the tests I had done were testing kind of my body's propensity to developing blood clots, and if I was, in risk to develop more, and they all came back good. I think it was just kind of the perfect storm, long drive home from Miami, 2 days later, long flight to Argentina. I didn't get up at all during the flight because they flew me at night and I fell asleep, a little bit dehydrated from the initial dropping of weight. So I think just all those things put together, just bad luck.
How was Argentina, by the way? I've been dying to go. I've never been.
Oh my God, it's some of the best food ever, man. Normally they fly us back real early the day after the fight, but they flew us back at night on Sunday afterwards. So I had the whole day to go. And we went to this one restaurant where, Argentina is known for their asados, their barbecues, where they just barbecue different cuts of meat and pretty much eat all day. So we went to a restaurant where that was kind of the theme. It was an all-you-can-eat place. And you just walk up to the grill. They have all these different cuts of meat laid out, and you point to which ones you want, and they just give it to you. And it was delicious.
All right. Well, I mean, I was already sold on going, and now it's on my bucket list, Ricardo. I've got to go. It's just so goddamn far. That's the only issue. How long was the flight?
I had a layover in Texas, so it was like 2.5 hours to Texas, and then another 10 or 11 hours from Texas to Argentina.
Ugh, it's a long flight. All right. Let's do this. Let's talk about the featherweight division. Here's what's happening as far as I can tell. You've got the old guard, and when I say old, I don't mean decrepit, but certainly the guys who've been there a while. You've got the old guard, and you got this new guard coming in, and they're slowly vying for power, the Volkanovskis, the Zabit Magomed Sharapovs. There are many others as well. Moicano, he's fighting the Korean Zombie here in a couple of weeks. Do you share that assessment of things? Do you think that's what's happening? Is there this sort of generational shift slowly happening?
Yeah, it happens. It kind of goes in cycles. It happens in every sport, and the veterans slowly start to get weeded out, and then the new up and comers come and take over. So this is no different than any other sport in athletics. Father Time is the one opponent that we cannot beat. So eventually he catches up to all of us.
Do you feel like, not suggesting this portends victory or defeat, but that's a fair way to frame your upcoming fight with Calvin Kattar?
Yeah, young up and comer up against a crafty veteran. It's a safe assessment, and I'm fine playing that role. I have a little secret. I'm Latino, so we age like a fine wine, and I feel younger as I get older through the years, and just look better every year. So I'm ready for it.
Argentina may have caused a bit of the blood clot, or at least the flight, but you had an incredibly important and redemptive win over Darren Elkins. I'm wondering what that win did for you, especially coming off the Josh Emmett loss.
It did a lot. I came off of 2 straight losses for the first time in my career. And that puts you into a deep hole. So getting back on the winning track was important. And then getting a finish over a guy like Darren just put a lot of confidence back in my system. That guy, he's an animal, and he's one of these guys where you think you have him beat and he comes back and knocks you out. So it was a great win to put under my belt and just get me back on that winning track.
How old are you, Ricardo?
I just turned 37, May 21st.
37 years old. All right. So I talked to some fighters. Famously, DC was like, when I'm 40, I'm done. Now, turns out he didn't stick to it for other reasons, but it was at least part of the way he wanted to frame his career. Now, as I mentioned, you're top 10 at featherweight. You got a big fight coming up at UFC 238. I'm not suggesting the end is imminent. That's not what this question is about. I guess what I am asking is, how are you framing, because we had Gustafsson retire over the weekend. We had Nick Hine retire over the weekend. How are you framing how the end will come? Do you have an age deadline, or will there just have to be something happens where you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore?
I think, the fire will have to be gone. I don't have an age deadline. A lot of it depends on my body. I obviously want to walk away from this sport, not get wheeled away from this sport. So just pay attention to my body, how I'm feeling. My health is number one, especially since I have a family now. And that's what I'm most concerned about. So if I'm still healthy and if I still have that fire in my stomach to compete, I'm gonna keep doing that.
And certainly there's nothing stopping you. So let's talk about Calvin Kattar a little bit here. A guy who can sort of do it all. Now, you have become one of those guys as well. But I'm wondering, when you assess him as a threat, tell me what you see. Give me the scouting report.
I see a good challenge. I see a guy with good hands. He's a little bit taller, a little bit rangier. We'll definitely have to work inside on him, not let him dictate the pace on the feet. And I'm going to test his ground game. So if he gives me the opportunity to take him down, that's what's going to happen, and we're going to see how he fares on the ground.
Any thought about card placement, either now or ever? Like, how much do you give consideration to where you are on the card? I believe you're on the ESPN prelims, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't even know where I'm at yet. I check into the hotel tomorrow and I'll find out then, I guess. But no, it doesn't matter to me whether I'm the first fight or the last fight on the card. I'm going to prepare the same way, mentally, physically, and go out there and do what I have to do.
Now, you live in Illinois or you live in Chicago? Well, I mean, Chicago's in Illinois.
Live in the south suburbs.
South suburbs. Okay. So better for you to stay in the fighter hotel than commute from your home?
Towards the end of the week, I'm going to stay at the fighter hotel. I think for tomorrow and maybe Wednesday night, I might just stay at home. But then when I get into that, meat of the weight cut, it's better to just separate myself. And then obviously after the weigh-ins, just get mentally focused on the fight.
All right, so let me ask you your predictions here. UFC 240, top of your division. Max Holloway is going to defend against Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar, I think, also 37 years old as well. What do you make of that fight? Who do you think is going to win?
That's going to be a great fight. Frankie Edgar is a great wrestler, but, Max just uses his range so well and reads opponents so well throughout the fight. I think he might outpoint Frankie on this one.
I believe, wasn't it with you where he did the pointing to the ground and y'all just slugged it out at the end? when he did that, what went through your mind? You're like, okay.
I said, finally, that if you look back at the beginning of that third round, the whole round, I keep going like this to try and coax him in. And that's why at the end, if you listen to his post-fight speech, he said that I telepathically told him that I wanted to throw down because I kept, waving him in. So that's what I was looking for. I knew he was beating me on the scorecards. I just wanted to get some more hits in. So that was a fun fight, and hopefully we get to do that one again someday.
Yeah, certainly was. All right, well, I'm looking forward to it. Ricardo Lamas takes on Calvin Kattar. I'm right. It's going to be on the ESPN portion of the prelims. Of course, the main event is going to be at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. Great catching up with you, Ricardo, and I can't wait to see you fight. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
All right, thanks a lot, Luke. I'll talk to you guys later.